I can still say pretty confidently, whatever it is you make, you ain't making it, no matter what franchise you pick. Right. So that's number one. But I think people would be surprised to learn that. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when I'm doing a consult with a client, I'm not asking them how much money they make.
Hello, and welcome to the Perfect Franchise Podcast.
I'm Kris, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Andrea.
In this podcast, we're on a mission to help you discover all that franchising has to offer.
We'll explore expert strategies, interview successful franchise owners, and give you the tools to make informed decisions.
So whether you're considering your options or you're ready to take that plunge, we're here to support you every step of the way.
So let's jump into today's episode. Hi, welcome back to the Perfect Franchise Podcast. Today, Andrea and I are super excited to have our fellow consultants here at the Perfect Franchise, Steve Belko and Todd Weiss. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here, Kris.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you on. We always love these. These are kind of our TPF expert series. And today I kind of wanted to do something a little different and kind of throw out some case studies. So sort of, what would you do? How would you help your client in these scenarios? And so, these are kind of fictional, but I'll tell you they're not fictional. We hear them all day long. And so, what advice are you going to give your clients as you hit some of these scenarios? And so I'll start us out here and give the first scenario. We hear it all the time. I'm miserable in my job. I need to replace my income. So let's start. The person has $200,000 salary. They need to replace it. What's sort of the advice you're giving them? How are you sort of approaching this franchise journey as you take your clients through this? Get me involved in how you kind of think about this. Anyone who wants to start? Steve, you want to start us?
I can start, yeah. So, yeah, Andrea, like you said, common conversation that we'll have with clients for sure, trying to replace a certain level of salary. And sometimes a client will come in and say, okay, 200,000, need to make it. Do I need one location? Do I need two? One territory if it's a territory-based business? And as I talk with my clients, in franchising, there's not a direct correlation between the number of units or the number of territories and how much you're going to make in a business. They vary. You can have a single location business that might generate $50,000 a year. Another one might generate $400,000 a year. It's all about making sure it's communicated with a franchise consultant that you're working with. And then as they go through the process of evaluating different businesses, certainly understand from their perspective, the businesses that they're going to focus on are ones that will give you an opportunity to achieve income levels that you need. And as you do the due diligence in the business, which obviously is extremely important, spend the time on doing it. You'll understand from the franchise company, from franchisees, the type of returns that you're able to generate, the time to returns, etc. And so as you do the due diligence, it's extremely important to talk through that with the company, talk through that with existing franchisees in the business, and then, do your analysis, put your numbers together, put your pro forma together, and make sure that you understand what that looks like. And the research, the due diligence is definitely going to be the important factor there.
Yeah, that's great. And Todd, so can I open my doors and day one I'm going to replace that salary, and can I do it with one unit? What do you tell people?
Well, I think you got a couple different things there, Andrea.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, I need to replace a $200,000 salary. I'm looking at a franchise. The first thing I ask the person is, I take a reverse approach. Why don't you just get another job? Right. So I'm making 200K. You're so zeroed in on that W-2 income, because when you're owning a business, that the W-2 it's completely different, which is a totally separate topic. And so that's one of the things that I bring up is challenging from that standpoint. In terms of I need to replace it. Is it 1 unit, 3 units? How many territories? I still drill down on the desired outcome and make it clear that is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. I like to set expectations that you're at least a year and a half, 2 years before you're normalizing what you're used to, sometimes longer. And that's a test really to see their visceral response to it. Because if I hear someone say, oh my gosh, that really scares me, it's an indication that maybe this isn't the right path for you. Hopefully that addresses your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Andrea, do I get to talk to you on this podcast?
Yeah,
Will you let me
go
talk?
for it.
All right.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'll let you talk.
So yeah, I agree. I always tell people we all would want to be, if we could just blink our eyes and be in year 2 or year 3, so many more of us would be entrepreneurs, right? It is bridging that chasm of the first year and the fact that almost assuredly, no matter how much money you make, you're not going to make it in your first year. I don't know what we're talking about yet. I don't know what franchises we're looking at. I don't even know how much money you make right now. I can still say pretty confidently, whatever it is you make, you ain't making it, no matter what franchise you pick, right? So that's number one. But I think people would be surprised to learn that, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when I'm doing a consult with a client, I'm not asking them how much money they make. Because theoretically, within reason, there's some exceptions on the ends of the spectrum, but theoretically, you can recreate whatever it is you're used to making with just about any franchise. It just depends on how many territories, how many locations, and how long, right? And what we want to do is find the fit. That's what's important. And yeah, there's franchise. You need to make $300,000, and there are franchises where you can make that with one location. But if it's not the right fit, you will fail. I'd rather you find the franchise that fits, where you only make $150,000 per territory, and then you have to do 2 or 3 territories. That's the right way to go. It's fit first, and then we'll figure out what the path is to recreating and then eventually surpassing your income.
That's in alignment with the 6-factor analysis that we talk about, Kris, and I've used that a lot over the last year, where it's, you've got these 6 questions, you're going through them, and you're never going to have 100% certainty. And that's another thing too, is if you can get 60%, 70% yes on, like, are they helpful getting clients? Are they clearly defining your role? You get 60%, 70% certainty yes there. It's like, that's a really good business. That's a good indication that model works. But if it doesn't match you, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I mean, I had a client tell me that they had a relative get into a Jimmy John's multi-unit, working in it full time, and they were absolutely miserable doing it. And their vision was coming from a corporate-oriented, like, white shoe roll, and now they're running a sandwich shop. And there's nothing wrong with running that. It's a good operating model, but they're miserable because they don't like doing that work, and that's really not how that business is designed.
Kris, there's also one other thing too, is when you look at different businesses and you look at location-based businesses, you look at territory-based businesses, there needs to be that understanding with a client that, you're going to start due diligence on a project. It might take you 2, 3, 4 months of due diligence. From the point in time that you make a decision to move forward with a business, if it's a location-based retail business, you're probably 9 to 18 months before you're actually opening your doors from that standpoint. And then you've got the time after that to start to generate cash flow. So that's an important factor too that people need to understand.
Yeah, good point.
Good point. All right, Kris, throw out another scenario.
All right, another scenario. This is one I love, and I'm not particularly good at handling this, so I'd love to hear from you guys, including you, Andrea. You're working with a client, married couple. One spouse is all in, the other spouse isn't. Not that they're not entrepreneurial, but they're just, anxious about the risk, or they're more risk averse. Maybe they're anxious about the time commitment. How do you suss that out without getting into the middle of marital distress, right? Because it's a real thing, and we know how important it is to have spouses on the same page going into such a big life decision like this. So, Todd, why don't you start us off with this one?
I think we talk about fear all the time, and when I see that, whether it's a spouse or not a different scenario, but usually what I tell folks is, or how I approach it is, that's good that you feel that way. It's good that you have some apprehension, because you should. That means you're thinking about what you want to do, and there is risk involved in it. And then what I try to do is actually drill down on what that risk, like, is it real? Is it just general fear and anxiety? or is it something specific with the model? That's how I start addressing it.
Yeah, I think when you look at that, number one, both individuals need to be part of the due diligence. They need to be part of the education, talking to the franchise company, talking to franchisees. As Todd said, some fear is valid, some fear is just a lack of education. And if the spouse is not part of the process of understanding the reduced risk that a good franchise company that can bring to the table, and it's brought to them after the fact, there's no chance. They're walking away. But if they're part of the process, part of the learning, hearing from the franchise company, hearing from franchisees, understanding the success of the franchise brand, etc., that goes a long way, and they have to be part of it. Period.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Uh, Go ahead, Todd. Todd,
Sorry,
did you have
Kris,
something?
didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, when we always think about the fear of it, there's also, you can reframe it. All right. We just addressed kind of being part of the process and identifying what the concerns are. Moving it forward is, what happens if you're successful, and what does that look like? Because if it works out, we always look at the downside, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. We're going to lose this money, and look, there's risk. But what if it works out? What if the statistical probability of success based on your due diligence, and you've done that due diligence, and you say, okay, fast forward 2-3 years from now, you've got this business that's doing X. How does that change your world? Does that make sense? And then you're framing it from a positive light too, because this does work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I really want to hear from Andrea because
I've been this.
Yeah, she's owned 2 franchises with her spouse. So what was it like, especially that first time around, going through the process? And were you guys always on the same page, or one person have to pull the other along? How did it work for you?
I'll tell you, I had a client last week, and I actually had a one-on-one with his wife who was very, very fearful of this. And I said right to her, I know where you're coming from. This happened to me. My husband read a book on franchising and came home and said, I want to buy a franchise. And I thought, gosh, like our clients get on the phone with us and they're like, yeah, my wife will come on board once I'm a little bit more and into it. And you're like, no, bring them on early. You try that, right? And I think you hit on that, Steve. It's great to have them involved early. It doesn't always happen. And so I was on that end where it's like, what are we doing? Are we really doing this? And everybody's relationship is different, right? So some people like, I don't need the information till the end. Other people like, I need to understand. And I think the more that clients can bring their spouse in early on so that we can help them, because we're a third-party advisor. We're not selling them anything. We're taking them through a process to say, is this right for you? And I think the point you just made, Todd, is big. It's like, what are you trying to get to? Because sometimes you'll hear from them, my husband or my wife is very risk averse, but they also want me to spend more time at home and the family. Well, how do you do that if you're in corporate and you're 9 to 5 and it's technically probably 8 to 6 that you're actually working? That's really hard, where you're missing everybody's T-ball games or whatever it is. Business ownership allows you to grow and scale. It's going to be more in the beginning, right? It always is. It takes a little bit more effort. But what are you getting to in that long-term path? I think that's really where Dave and I looked at this and said, what are we trying to do? We don't want to stay in corporate the rest of our lives. How do we build that? And do we need to step back, take less vacations, basically, cut down our expenses till we build up this business? That's what we did both times. And I think but it's hard for us. It's really our clients that have to bring the spouse along. We can help support them the best we can. But I think anytime that we can pull them in earlier, it's easier to give them the same knowledge so they're not playing telephone back and forth between them. Yeah. Anything to add, Kris, to that?
No, well, I do. I actually have another. Well, let's do it. It's another question for you guys, kind of attached to this. Here's what I have found happens from time to time, and I find it's the trickiest part of this scenario. Sometimes a spouse, let's say it's the wife, maybe hasn't been as involved in the process to the points you guys have been making and how important that is. Maybe it's just naturally more risk averse. Maybe. A lot of times we can just kind of default to those conclusions. Oh, she's just a little more risk averse, or she just doesn't know as much as her husband. She needs to get caught up. But you start to wonder if, you know what's really at play? She's not as confident in her husband's ability to do this as he thinks she is. Have you run into that? And how do you handle that?
Ooh, that's a hard
I'm
one.
shooting from the hip on that. I could try to.
Yeah.
Let me try to address that, Kris, just to have more fun. I actually think that's probably a really good read. Is, whatever spouse it is hiding their ineffectiveness by not allowing the other person to participate. In that instance, I would approach it. I would be challenging that person up front to say, we got to really bring this other person in on the call and then talk through it. I know that's kind of a simple way of looking at it. But as a scenario, I've got a consult with somebody later today who is kind of throwing that out there. So it's a good tip, but that's how I would address it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
I'd
easy.
say, Kris, also each business, each franchise, there's certain variables, certain things that people bring to the table are more important than others, depending on the franchise business. And I think part of that would be maybe driving to understand what that spouse's strengths are, and getting their spouse, kind of backing that side of it, and then driving with the particular brands that you're working with, that those particular strengths that person brings to the table is very valuable in that business, very important in that business, and something that if you can bring it to the table, you can be very successful in that particular business, because each business is totally different in regards to the variables that an owner is bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things, I love when one of your clients brings their spouse on the consult. So that's kind of we have a first initial call, and that second long hour call, we're diving in. I always notice that the husband and wife add sort of strengths and things that they're not as good at to each other. Like, oh, she's being modest. She really is good at this. Or, you know what, probably not as good at this. I think that's really a good read. So again, I think anytime we can, which I know is always hard, but I think it's good to kind of hear, because it'll help us match you so much better, where you're not going back after where they think, I'm so good at all these different things, and the spouse says, I don't know, you sure you want to do this type of business because it has this, and this aspect, and that may be something that they're not great at. So that it really helps you the more you learn about them. It's not about they're not going to be a good business owner. It may just be we've got to find something different, right? That's a better fit for them.
Well, I think overall there in this scenario, there's an issue out there. Whatever that hesitancy is, could be I don't have confidence in my wife or husband, or you have to have that discussion, and you have to get it out. And it might not happen on one call. So I noticed with the check-in calls that we all do, 3-4 discussions into the franchise, if I have both people on the phone, it's huge, because after like call 3, they'll break down and they'll tell you what it is. Then that's the hard part. We want to get that right away, but sometimes it takes a month to do there.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I tell folks the value of the question is not in the answer so much, meaning I'd like to know the answer, but if it's that personal and it's, between spouses, I don't need to know the answer. What I need to know is that they're asking the right questions and they're talking about it amongst themselves, right? So here's the things you guys need to be talking about. And if I know they're doing that, I can feel better about it, right?
Well,
Andrea,
we didn't get through that many scenarios, but we had a lot of good content, didn't we? That was good.
We did.
So it went by quick. We really appreciate both of you coming on and kind of playing out some of these scenarios that we hear real life every day, right? These are typical scenarios that are happening, and we're really trying to help and support our clients get through that. So I appreciate both of you coming on. So if you're thinking about franchising, remember that while there's no one-size-fits-all, the perfect franchise for you is definitely out there. To explore your options, visit theperfectfranchise.com and click on Let's Talk to schedule a call with a consultant on the Perfect Franchise team. We look forward to connecting with you again on our next episode.